50 years ago today, The Godfather, perhaps, and certainly in my estimation, the greatest movie of all time, started unspooling in a theater near you. And joining us here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line to discuss all of this is the man who earned an Oscar nomination for playing Sonny Corleone in that film, the great James Caan, here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, James?
I'm great, as you said, just great.
I love it. Happy anniversary. Happy 50th.
Oh, yeah.
On The Godfather.
No, that was my son who did that picture, yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, man, it is just one of my favorites, and let me just jump right into it. How did you get involved in The Godfather? How did that come across your world?
I did a picture called The Rain People, which was a very kind of art house film that Coppola did when I was 28, so he's a little older than me, like a year or so. And I played a football player out of Hofstra, where I actually went for Howdy Myers was the coach. So we worked together. We were on the road for like 2 or 3 months doing that, and got along very well. And I don't know, we just stayed friends. And when he got this, he came to me right away. And then, of course, then Paramount got involved. I mean, yeah. And then he had this cast in his head, and we went up to San Francisco with Bobby Duvall, with this kid named Al Pacino, and Brando. And it's, for a corned beef sandwich, we just read around, played around some improvised scenes and whatever, just kid around up there at San Francisco. And anyway, that was that. Then he went in, the picture got greenlit, he went to New York, just got locations, etc., and then he called me one night and said, Jimmy, I said, what? He says, they want you to come in and test. I said, test what? You got a Porsche you want me to drive around the block? What are you talking about? So he says, no, they want you to play Michael. I said, what? It's just, and I know Francis so well, you know what I mean? It's just, and the success of that movie, this is a little added thing.
Yes.
That goes to your question. You get charged a little extra because of this information.
Okay, sir.
That the success of The Godfather, partially, I mean, is the fact that Francis, and this is what I told Paramount before Francis was involved, that he's a Mediterranean Italian. He's not a Brooklyn Italian. In other words, his dad was lead flautist for Toscanini. And I mean, he grew up with music, and his boys at the time, they knew the cutting room when they were 3-4 years old. They were in a film room, and so everything was music and art and this and that, and there was none of these dems and those. And I think because it became such a family-oriented film, I mean, it was the people you were concerned with more than you were the horses, shall we say.
So you were originally, James, slated to play Sonny from the beginning, and then they call up. And
when he called me, Francis wanted me to play Sonny.
Right, and so then now
now I came in to New York.
Right.
He said, "Come on in," and there must have been 400 or 500 guys lining the walls of this big studio on 59th or 7th. I couldn't remember. With every stupid accent you ever heard in your life. I mean, what are they doing here? Australian accents. I mean, just every actor you could think of was there. Everybody. And as a matter of fact, they tested me for Michael, and then they tested me. Mario Puzo wrote this book called The Making of the Godfather, and in it he said if Caan had boobs, he'd have played Kay.
Well, you have range, James Caan. There's no question about that. So then how did you wind up finally getting Sonny? Because Pacino read for Michael.
Yeah, because Francis They wanted me, but they wanted me to play the other role, but which was completely wrong. And Francis has his ideas, and that's why he's Francis. You know, and Al was something you had to squeeze out. In other words, the character of Michael, you had to get him to that point where he was a leader and a boss and a crime guy. And that's what Al did. And they actually got in fights, sometime because Al had it all pretty well mapped out in his head. And Francis maybe wanted him to move faster. I don't know, but they'd argue a little bit. And by the way, they didn't want Brando either. Oh, great.
Well, get into that a little bit, James Caan. What do you mean they didn't want Brando?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because they all... I don't know. They must have had comic books or something. I don't know. I mean, it couldn't... I heard Brando, I wanted to do the picture if he would have done like a postcard. I don't care. I mean, he was the guy. He was great.
James Caan here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so then who was your inspiration for Sonny, James? How did you decide to play him?
Well, believe this or not, you might believe anything, Rich. You're so gullible.
Thank you, James. Appreciate that.
And the first scene we did was in a Genco olive oil company, when Sollozzo comes up there and, we don't mess with dope, and this and that.
Right.
And then Brando goes down and they shoot him outside the thing. Well, in that scene, I was kind of lost. It was the first day of shooting. Lost in the sense that I don't study at night. I'm going to do the next day. That's not fun. I mean, I like to let everything come out of character, and not to be an artist, but again, yes, to be an artist. So I had this feeling of what I thought Sonny should be like. I didn't know exactly. I didn't have the physical stuff or the speech pattern or whatever it was that I find. And I went home that night, first night, and I was shaving because we were going out to dinner or something. And while I'm looking in the mirror, I was a lucky guy because as a kid, a young guy, I was friendly with a lot of these comedians. I was a kid that went around with like Rickles and Don Adams and all those guys. And Rickles, he just drove me nuts, And he was so funny. And I looked in the mirror and I started being Rickles, that's a nice suit when you have it clean and burnt, whatever. So I came in the next day and I was Rickles. I made fun of Hal Roddy's suit. That's going to rot on you, you pig, or whatever I did. I just did like Don Rickles. And believe it or not, I hope you believe it, and I hope you haven't hung up. Have you?
I'm hanging on your every word, James.
I like you there, buddy. Stay where you are.
Okay, I'm here.
I just started being Rickles.
So
had all day, and Francis, God bless him, he let me go. He tells everybody like. Now he called me this was a couple of years ago. He lost a lot of weight, and he let me improvise a lot.
So you're saying are you saying your inspiration for Sonny Corleone and the way that you played him?
No, all
was Rickles.
In other words, he's telling people now like Bada Bing was never written, and Biddy Bop and all of that stuff was never written. But it was because Francis gave me the confidence, just go, do. And someone said, Jimmy said, what does Bada Bing mean? I don't know. He says, but they say that in his neighborhood, let it be,
Yeah, you got to put one in his. It's not. You can't just walk up. You got to put one in his head. But boom, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, and then all of that. So, Francis, and then he yelled at me for saying, you could have been a multi-jillionaire if you had that thing. What do you call it? Stamped or whatever.
Oh yeah, you got a T-shirt or a bumper sticker or something like that, right? Oh,
so I said, well, why didn't you tell me 50 years ago? You're such a smart guy. Anyway, I did all of that, even with stuff on Sunnyside where I grew up, where You know, it was like a guy would break something of yours, take it out of your hand, break it, and he'd throw money on the floor. Like when the camera guy, that was also improvised. When I came out of the wedding, walking by the FBI guys in the car, and I come down, I'm walking back into the wedding, there's a guy there taking pictures, a bunch of guys there.
Right, yeah.
You know where, just before I go back in, and I grab the camera, and I throw it on the ground, I smash it, which made the property guy really happy because it was obviously an expensive camera. And I looked down on it, and I just instinctively took out like $40 out of my pocket and threw it on the ground. I walked in because as long as you paid for it, everything was okay.
James Caan here on the Rich Eisen Show.
You know what I mean? He let it go.
Yeah, James Caan here on the Rich Eisen Show on the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. Is it true that Brando needed cue cards sometimes for his lines, James?
He did that when he had long speeches. No, Brando he was just great. I loved him, man. He's a good guy, you know. Being around him was really special because any one of those guys that said he wasn't, you know, to their liking or something, they were lying. They're full of crap. They spent their lives trying to be like him, especially a lot of those English actors. You know, he was just fantastic and very sensitive and just a good guy, just a regular guy.
When did you know, James Caan, that this was going to be a generational hit? Something that is in the lore of movie making, The Godfather. When did that hit? When did that maybe hit you?
We're all pretty selfish, Rich. I mean, I remember the first night when they showed it, and then we were at the Sherry, and I got so pissed off at Francis.
Why?
Because there was this scene that was like, I don't know. I mean, it was like 8 pages long between Bobby and I before I go to Al with Bada Bing and all that. You know, he says, we'll find out who's going to hit Sollozzo. I mean, the cop.
Yeah.
And it was like a long scene. It was, and Francis cut it out and just left me the last few lines before. And of course, we're pretty selfish, to be honest. And even if I'm not honest, I'm pretty selfish. and that's all I could think about. And everybody said, you were great. I was saying, like, kiss my butt. You know, I don't know. And, of course, I got over that. But that's how selfish we are, you know. I just forgot.
Wow. So
then, I don't know. It opened a certain amount of theaters. They tried to do everything wrong, and then they pulled them back and put it back in to another 1,200. And that's it. It is, you know, won the best picture of all time again with the AFI, and the cast was great, and we had a good time. See, that's what makes success too. If you're having a good time, especially like your shows were fun for the people who watched them because you guys seemed like you were having a good time.
We do.
And the same goes true. I believe that people in the audience are enjoying themselves because they can't put their finger on it. But if they can tell that people are liking what they're doing up there, I mean, it's just some artistic bullshit. Excuse me, I'm cursing.
You're all for it. I love it. It's you know, and I just remember when I did see Godfather Part 2, you know, the end of it, right? Where you're back around the dinner table, and the scene is, you know, where Michael's about to inform, you know, your father that he's going to go enlist in the army, and you know, and you're like, break your father's heart on his birthday, and it's just what a way for that movie to end. I just remembered you being back, and I was excited because, you know, I all saw the toll booth scene, and it was just great to see you back on that screen. You know? Yeah. So, last one for you. What do you think of when you see that toll booth scene again?
I try not to. It was pretty scary. I mean, to be honest with you, if there were no girls on the set, I wouldn't have done it.
What do you mean?
No, because there were girls there. I had to do it. What am I going to, you know? I got an image here. Anyway, I did it. He put 147 squibs on me in my jacket. Now these squibs they're brass with gunpowder in the middle of this little V that they cut into this 1-inch long piece of brass and put a sack of blood over the top of that V, and they sew it into your clothes. And they have to make sure they're pointing out because it blows the material out, it blows everything out. And they actually use those very same squibs on the car. They put them in the car and put Bondo over it and paint it. So it's strong enough to blow the Bondo out of the car, when they fire it. And they fire it by putting a nail on this nail board, by putting a nail that's attached to another electrical thing. And each time it makes contact with another nail, each nail represented one of the plugs. So we had over like 5,000 all told. Or a couple thousand, I forgot what it was, in the car and in the car and in the booth, and so I, like I say, I wouldn't. It was pretty hairy, so it had to be like a dance, music. You had to get your hands moving
right
a certain way because it would blow a hole in your hand. And like I said, the girls would make me do that.
James Caan, you are the best for doing this. I really appreciate it. You're one of my favorites. This movie is truly my favorite, certainly in the genre. And
could you get me a job hanging out with you guys?
Anytime you want to.
Straighten out your picks and everything.
Oh yeah, we could figure it out for the football.
First thing I want to do is get Baker or Maester. Who's going to take this poor guy?
I don't know. I'll tell you what, James. It strikes me as he might have to either go to Seattle or wait it out after the draft to see who'll take him.
Seattle, I think, is all that's left. But I think there were two guys out of the whole league that might have made a play for him when he was threatening to leave.
Right.
And then you look, he's had 57 interceptions in 4 years. It's like, oh well.
I know. I have no idea, but I'll stay in touch. We'll have you back on whenever you want, and I appreciate you spending time on such a momentous occasion. All
right. Say hi to all the guys. Say hi to the Boomer. I haven't seen him either. And I
will do that. I love it. You take care of yourself, James Caan.
Over there,
right back at you. Thanks again. That's James Caan right here on the Rich Eisen Show on the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.